Who's a good boy? Hey? The NCRI, which if you don't know what that is the National Council of Resistance of Iran's Foreign Affairs. They held a rally over in Villepinte, Paris. 2 Iranians had been arrested for allegedly planning a terrorist attack on that very meeting. One of those men was Asadollah Assadi, an Iranian diplomat. The other man was Saeed Hashemi, and he's been arrested. A unit of the Iranian intelligence ministry has had their assets frozen, which means they're not allowed to use them anymore, and it's been seized by the government. The 2 men had been caught with 500 grams of TATP, a homemade explosive, and a detonation device. He was a diplomat. He was not allowed his diplomatic immunity because he was on holiday. Nullifying all of the protection his government would give him against arrests. What was France's response to this, you might think? Well, their foreign minister, Jean-Yves Le Drian, responded by saying there is now a need for demanding approaches in the relationship between France and Iran. This is a bit peculiar though, because Iran have US sanctions on them right now, which causes a lot of trouble with trade, especially in oil. And for them to go out and cause a terrorist attack over in a European country, which Europe are trying to go against Trump's regulations and sanctions against Iran and trying to continue doing business with Iran, wouldn't it be counterproductive for Iran to go and commit some sort of terrorist attack, just sever those last few relationships that they have with business, when this year their currency had lost over half its value and their money and their savings are almost worthless? Do you think it would be really smart idea for them to go and play something like that, do a dangerous maneuver like that? And not only that, a diplomat with a good record behind him, with his career and his future jeopardized for some homemade explosives. It sounds really peculiar. In a recent UN meeting, about 2 weeks ago from today, hey, calm down boy. In a recent UN meeting, which happened about 2 weeks ago, Israel claimed that they found hidden supplies of nuclear material in Tehran. Tehran is Iran's capital, if you didn't know. Iran has broken their nuclear agreement. However, investigations were done, and it said that Iran were complying with the rules put on them. The dog was going to knock my camera down. I had to move. You know what's really interesting? Iran's foreign minister said that he asked for the French officials to open their eyes to the truth. That the plot was orchestrated by the US, Israel, and a terrorist group called Mujahideen al-Kaq, MEK. Those 2 Iranians were allegedly part of the MEK. However, that doesn't add up either, because the MEK is in fact an Iranian opposition who had previously killed politicians and civilians. An example of those sanctions that the US has put on Iran for oil is an Iranian company, Circa Energy, attempted to try and purchase shares of the oil field to outbuy Total and Shell's shares in an oil field out in the North Sea. The US have pulled out of the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, which means that Iran has now a lot of strict sanctions in terms of their business deals. That oil site.
Todd, no. No. Todd.
That oil site out in the North Sea is called Rum Oil Field, and it supplies 3% of Britain's natural gas supplies. If Iran don't get a sanction exemption, that means that Rum oil field will have to shut down. And they got a deadline too, November. That's 3% of our gas gone. Trouble between Iran and the US doesn't end at trade and sanctions. They're also fighting for area of control over Iraq. You see, Iraq is next to Syria, and fighting a war against the terrorists in Syria requires control of areas surrounding to support bases, troops, supplies, vehicles, all such stuff. Controlling Iraq gives them more power. These tensions may cause conflict again, the likes of which were seen back in 2003 after the US had invaded Iraq. The terrorists have nearly been all eradicated, except for one last rebel stronghold in Idlib. And the reason why they haven't just completely wiped out and bombed the place is because it would cause massive destruction, the likes of which would be, officials say,
the next few months in Idlib into the worst humanitarian catastrophe with the biggest loss of life of the 21st century.
The US have said that it would retain its troops over in Iraq and Syria, which the Iranians, they don't like that. They don't like that idea. Currently, Iran control an area on the border of Syria and Iraq. On the Iraqi side, a place called Al-Qaim. In this base, just across the border, 8,000 Iranian troops are stationed there, including Shia fighters, and the Iraqi Popular Mobilization Unit is one of the largest checkpoints in their area, controlling a crescent of 12 miles. On the other hand, the US have a base in a place called Al-Tanf. Al-Tanf is an area where Syria, Jordan, and Iraq all have their borders. Here is located 1,000 US, Norwegian, and French special agents, as well as 400 former Syrian rebel fighters, and 2,000 Sunni Arabs from Syria itself. That 12-mile stretch, which the PMUs control, was bombed in June, and no one owned up. It could be a number of people. It could be Russians, the US, Israel. Mike Pompeo, the US Secretary of State, said there's a very good likelihood that US are going to retain their troops over in Syria after the fighting is all done. Iran's head of Revolutionary Guard Foreign Legion, Qasem Soleimani, said that if the US start this war, then Iran will finish it. And he said that, you know, this war will destroy all that you possess. And that's a big threat. Those are war words. The US has retaliated to Iran's persuasion over Iraq by threatening with withdrawing funding to Iraq. I'll put up some facts and figures about US's aid to Iraq. Not only this, the US sanctions on Iran have caused a dramatic funding reduction in their military efforts. Basra, a city south of Iraq, has had a terrible summer this year, 2018, because their water supply had been broken down, causing thousands to become ill. In that area, their leader had not been elected again. And so the position is open, and the US are trying to encourage voters to vote in favour of political factions that would benefit them. Iran are doing the very same. But here's what's really interesting. Iran currently have the sort of control over the area. And the US may have in fact damaged their water supply to bring aggravations and tension against the Iranian control and to undermine their authority in the area. If so, this seems to have worked, as protests were held outside of the Iranian consulate in the area. And in fact, the building was razed. And in those protests, a local man had made a comment that the faces that he saw there were in fact not faces that he'd seen before in Basra, but faces from a different area altogether. Iranian-backed PMUs have allegedly sent missiles in retaliation to the US consulate in Basra. However, the US cannot prove that it was Iran themselves who sent those missiles. Mike Pompeo said himself that the US would respond promptly and appropriately to any such attacks. Tensions are really heating up. Thank you for watching.